Ajitbhai, if you can hear me, please can you switch your video on?
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay.
Apologies to the audience. We had a bit of a technical difficulty with the opening slides, and therefore we had to cut them short. But Ajitbhai, please take over.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We'll carry on with the life of Bhagwan Parshvanath, and as usual, we will discuss some other aspects of learning from Jain Dharma. And please feel free to ask any questions. I'll start off with the Pratna. नमो अर्यन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो वत्सायाणं नमो लोये सप्पसाहुणम् एषो पञ्चनमकारो सप्पपावपणासनो मङ्गलाणं च सप्पेसिं पठमं हवै मङ्गलम् नमो अरिहन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो वत्सायाणं नमो लोये सप्पसाहुणम् एषो पञ्चनमुक्कारो सप्पपावपणासनो मङ्गलाणं च सप्पेसिं परमं हवै मङ्गलम् नमो अरिहन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो वत्सायाणं नमो लोये सप्पसाहुणम् एषो पञ्चनमुक्कारो सप्पपावपणासनो मङ्गलाणं च सप्पेसिं परमं हवै मङ्गलम् वीर सर्वसुरा सुरेन्द्रमहितो वीरम्बुदा संश्रिता वीरेणाभिहत स्वकर्मनिचयो वीराय नित्यं नमः वीरातीर्थमिदं प्रोतमतुलं वीरशिखोरं तपो वीरे श्रीधृतिकीर्तिकान्तिनिचय श्रीवीरभद्रं दिश कमठे धरणेन्द्र च स्वोचितं कर्म कुर्वति प्रभुस्तुल्य मनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रीयस्तु वः अंगूठे अमृतवसे लप्तितड़ा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार उवसगहरं पासं पासं वन्दामि कमघड़मुखं विसहर विसनिनासं मंगलकल्याणावासं विसहर फुलिंगमन्तं कंठे धारे जोषयामणुओ तसगहरोगमारिडुठ जराजन्ति उवसामम् चिट्ठौ दुरे मंतो तिजपणामोवि बहुफलो होय नर तिरिये सुवि जीवा पावन्ति न दुःख दोगचम तुह समत्ते लत्ते चिंतामणिकप्पाय भये पावन्ति अविघेणं जीवा एरामरं ठाणं यसंथो महायस पत्तिवर निभरेण हि एण तादेव दिज्य बोहिं भवे भवे पास चिण चंद Bhagwan Parshvanath, our 23rd Tirthankar, we are following his life from his previous births, and the association between him and his elder brother Kamat in from the first life, and how they are linked and how they meet from uh, far apart in the universe, from Devlok to Narak, to come back again in another life, and fate would join them up because of the bond of hatred that Kamat had developed in the first life when they were together. The powerful karma brings him near the elevated soul that is destined to be Bhagwan Parshvanath in the future, and fulfills his destiny of being the cause of death to somebody who is totally devoid of any violence, somebody who is a monk, who is in deep meditation, and somehow the creature, as a snake in the life when Bhagwan Parshvanath was Marubhuti, the elephant, again as a snake in the next life when they are together as Bhagwan Parshvanath, as Kiran Vaig Vidyadhar, who then becomes a monk, and Kamat as a large snake python who is in the same forest where Bhagwan Parshvanath's soul, the Vidyadhar Kiran Vaig, the Muni Kiran Vaig, who is now meditating, the snake becomes the instrument of his death. The snake obviously doesn't know why he feels such hatred and starts attacking a completely innocent person. Maybe that is the nature of that particular life, but not always. What we hear in the different stories that we uh, listen to or which watch videos of wildlife, we do find that there are wild animals who uh, are particularly generous, who are not always wild and violent. And I'll recite a simple story that I've just come across recently about that a bit later on. And we will explore what kind of emotions and what kind of thought processes and the intensity, what kind of intensity generates a karma that will continue to haunt our lives for many lives to come in the future, and why it is so important that during this lifetime, in fact, every day, if possible, and then if we feel uh, so spiritually inclined on a daily basis, but at least a lot of you who are active in the other circles where religious practice is discussed or shared will know that uh, at least every 4 months during the Chomasi, uh, before the Chomasi Chaudas Pratikrama, people will exchange Michhami Dukadam for anything that's they have laid foundations for in terms of hatred or dislike. And again, all of us remember or know that on an annual basis, we will try and recall any deep-seated dislike, enmity, feelings of being hurt or upset by somebody else, and holding on to a grudge. And we'll try and discard all that and seek their forgiveness, ask for Michhami Dukadam, and forgive anybody else who we may think, who may ask us for forgiveness, and not holding on to a grudge for very long, ideally not for long at all, meaning not even for the day, if possible. Then we see that Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji's soul continues to progress spiritually, and at the end of his life as a monk, because of all the punya that he has acquired, in the fifth life, he goes to the 12th Devlok with a lifespan of 22 Sagropam. We briefly discussed the structure of the universe and where the Devloks are and where the Narak or the hells are. In the Kamat's Jeev, in the fifth life, goes to the sixth Narak with a lifespan of 22 Sagropams. And we move on from there. So let me just stop sharing. Or was I sharing? I wasn't sharing, was I? Let me just share this slide with everybody so that just as a reminder for now. Okay. Just for a moment, for all of us to remember this. I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay. You know, the justice system that is the way nature has got sets of rules that are guaranteed to be fair to every living creature in the universe. Now, this is not by design by any particular supreme being. This is the nature of how the universe functions and has always functioned and will always function. Every choice, every action generates a recording or an imprint in the form of karmas, which then unfold when the time comes and deliver the response, the reward, the punishment, and all of it may be multiplied several times by interest, not just the punishment, but also the reward, depending on how that particular soul has conducted himself subsequently after that particular karma was bound. And the intensity with which the original good deed or bad deed was actually actioned or conducted depends or determines how strong the karma that is bound will be, how big that karma would be. What is also determined is when it is likely to come in fruition, and whether it is the kind of karma that can be subject to modification, that is anika chit, in the time while it is in stasis, or the karma is formed so intensely that no matter what, it cannot be modified, and it will definitely show its effect in the future when it is so determined. Now, we are constantly, every living being is constantly acquiring new karmas. And by constant meaning, there is not a single unit of time when karmas are not being bound. In the same way, used up karmas are falling off. Other karmas are being modified on a constant basis as well. And all that process goes on internally. Karma, as we have learned in the previous class, and those of you who are new to this course in this particular class, will remember that karmas are a form of matter that is non-life. The soul is the only living entity. So there is only one kind of life in the universe, and that life is the soul, Jeev. Every life form in its myriad forms is ultimately the properties of what is alive or what is Jeev, what is life, is the same. Whether one is a human being, a dev, a narak, an animal, a plant, a life of a rock, water, air, fire, anything that is alive because there is a soul there. So the fundamental qualities of the soul, and every soul is the same deep inside. The outward appearance in different life forms is different, and that is what we then experience. So Jain Dharma talks about the universality of all life, and hence the importance of reverence for all life. If we understand that that is where our fundamental life lies in, and everything that is not of that core dravya, that is the soul, is outside of us and therefore impermanent, and therefore not something to value about life. So when we go through our value systems, what we will find is that over many, many lifetimes, we have held on to a belief that those temporary things that we feel attached to are more valuable then the permanent the permanent entity that actually feels the need for all these other external temporary things. We have constantly valued those temporary situations, things, more than our permanent natural existence. And the reason for that is that we have never really understood who we are. So we constantly keep on coming back to this question, who am I? And if we are able to grasp the idea that we are the soul, then to progress on to understanding what the soul is, and then progress on to understanding or feeling exactly what that is ultimately the purpose of our existence as a human being, because this kind of awareness, though, is possible, as we've seen with the life of Marubhuti the elephant, and it is possible in Narak as well. It is possible in Devlok as well, and it is obviously possible as a human being, that first inkling of that awareness. And in many ways, nature's systems are very generous. So if you look at, I mean, people have asked the question of what's the difference between Mahavidya Kshetra and Bharat Kshetra and Airavat Kshetra, all the different Kshetras. So the time cycles are present in the Bharat and the Airavat Kshetras. And what is the time in the fourth ara that we have had when we had the 24 Tirthankars, that kind of time of where spiritual emancipation is much easier, and that happens during that period, that is a constant kind of time in all Mahavidya Kshetras. And if you look at the length of the unhappy period in Bharat Kshetra and Mahavidya Kshetra, the fifth and the sixth ara of the descending time cycle, like where we are now, we are in the fifth ara, and the first and the second ara of the ascending time cycle, in total make only 84,000 years. The rest of the time, the fourth ara, third ara, second ara, first ara, and conversely, in the next time cycle, the third ara, the fourth ara, fifth ara, and the sixth ara, in terms of how the world is, it is much more peaceful, much more comfortable, and it is there for a very, very long time. So the state of paradise, the state of the possibility of spiritual emancipation, to have the atmosphere around you that can help you quickly progress spiritually towards moksha, all that time is much longer. So in many ways, I look at this as an understanding that nature is actually very generous. It rewards us very well, and its punishments appear to be terrible, but listening to all the stories of even the most sinful people, their ability to transform their lives by attaining a level of spiritual enlightenment, understanding who they are or what the soul is, recognizing the faults and without pride and deceit, asking for forgiveness for the wrongs that one has done, and then looking at what is good around us and in others, and then having the generosity to emulate them, to understand that people are better than me, they are doing this much better than me, and I need to understand that and value them. Hence, the value of Naukar mantra. It is all about namaskar, of understanding the virtues of these five Parmestis who are constantly around the universe and are constantly spreading the good, and therefore we remember them on a daily basis and bow down to them. And that feeling of reverence for the five great entities, not defined by any name or any particular person, but defined by their virtues only, helps us focus on virtues of the soul, and therefore, in many ways, even small acts, thoughts, words that are good, that recognize all the good in about the awareness of the soul, about being generous, being virtuous. Even those little thoughts, deeds, words carry a huge amount of benefit. And our lives progress slowly in this day and age. And I think a lot of people get a bit disheartened. But in our other class on Wednesday, we often discuss that progress happens slowly, but progress happens definitely if we keep at it. And slowly, if we carry on with tinkering with what goes on in our mind, and then gently adjusting, correcting where we see any faults. And that is really where the trick is. How reflective is your psyche? How clearly do you see yourself? Are you being honest with yourself and recognizing what is wrong? The more clearer we are in our minds and in our soul about that, the more truthful and honest we are about how we appear, not just to others, we appear to ourselves. And that level of sort of listening and reflective practice is what all our Guru Bhagwans are doing on a constant basis. And therefore, there is an importance of what the importance of Guru as to who should be a Guru, and whoever kindles the light of spiritual progress in you can be a Guru. And a question that was being debated before we started on, Kavit was asking that if we wanted to find or we wanted to get a Guru, if our Gurus do not travel and do not always use other means of communication, for those of us who are living abroad, how can we find a Guru? And the question actually started off with the other question, that not all monks travel, and why is that? So I said I'll answer that question of why traveling is not allowed for those sadhus and sadhuji bhagwans who have taken the vows of five great vows called Panch Mahavrat. And we have come across Bhagwan Parshvanath's lives in the past where at a certain stage in his life as a human being, he has, even in the life as the first life as Marubhuti, he remained detached from worldly interests and led almost an ascetic life, but he did not actually become a monk. In the life as Marubhuti the elephant, when he is enlightened and remembers his past life and then adopts within the limits of his life as an elephant, adopts the vows that he remembered from his past life, that of a Shravak. Obviously, he couldn't conduct the same level of charitra as a sadhu bhagwant, as an elephant, but he practiced what he could, recognizing the importance of that. And in the subsequent lives, we see that he becomes a monk every time, progresses spiritually, and then goes on to, with the permission of his Guru Bhagwant, to roam around in for meditation on his own. So Ekal Vihari, that kind of permission is sought and is granted, and he goes ahead and increasingly performs more and more deeper meditation and penance. The vows of a Jain Muni generally, there are five, but there is also something that is added as well. The five vows are complete non-violence, saying no, speaking no lie at all. So that includes even speaking a truth that may cause harm to the listener. So they are very careful in every word that they utter. So that's called Vachana Gupti, meaning being aware of what your words will achieve and not using any words that may not help your spiritual progress or the other person listening to it. If that is not of any value to their spiritual progress, then those words are not considered to be right. That is Vachan Gupti. But the vow is to not use words, knowledge, information that can be potentially harmful to the other people and not to disclose them. So a lot of Muni Bhagwans may, by virtue of their knowledge, their intellect, may know a lot more about the person sitting in front of him or her, but will be very, very careful in disclosing or discussing only if they see a benefit in us, for us, when they disclose or they have a conversation with us, will they disclose something important like that? So when somebody is asking a specific question, then they'll be very careful in answering that question. And there are many examples of that kind of behavior and those kinds of exchanges in the past, and I'm sure a lot of them occur currently as well. I don't know if all of you are aware, but there is a similar system of confession that is prevalent among Christians. So most of us probably know that there is a practice in among Christians to go to the church and have a meeting with the priest, and the priest hears what is being said behind a screen, so that the person confessing, so confessions are part of that Christian practice. Confessions, the person confessing is hidden, and there is a similar practice that we are meant to do, and many of us have never done it, but it is important to at least do something called a lifetime confession. That means you remember everything that has been done in your life that has been sinful, and you ask for forgiveness, but you honestly disclose everything that you've done. And when the Guru Bhagwans hear this, and a lot of our Guru Bhagwans actually are hearing this repeatedly from a lot of people, but you will never hear any one of them discussing anything that is personal. So their level of commitment to what we understand as GDPR is of such a high order that, and the amount of information and the detail of each individual's opening up of their lives that our Guru Bhagwans will hear is so immense, and you find that the level at which they are trusted is beyond the level of trust of any other people. We are all bound by those kinds of ethics, morals, but the clarity and the intensity with which we actually follow that is nothing compared to what our Guru Bhagwans, our Sadhuji Bhagwans actually are taught to do and practice on a daily basis. So the second vow of not saying the untruth, the third vow of not taking anything that does not belong to them without the permission of the owner. So if you are sitting with a Sadhu Bhagwant and we've got a pen and paper by our side, and Sadhu Bhagwant wants to use a pen and paper to explain something to us, he would not touch our pen and paper without our express permission. He would say, Sahib, આ વાપરો અથવા તો તમને આપું છું, તમે આ વાપરો. And they will not keep. So without our permission, if you are, say, working in an office or a desk, we quite easily borrow some things that is lying there without necessarily asking permission, understanding that this is a temporary borrowing, but that kind of behavior is not allowed. Obviously, any behavior that is beyond that, which we would clearly consider as theft, that is obviously not allowed. The fourth is brahmacharya, and there is a much wider, deeper meaning to brahmacharya, but here it refers to any kind of involvement with the opposite sex, sensual pleasure, and there is something what every sadhu bhagwan follows what is called brahmacharya in a ward, the nine sort of fences of brahmacharya, and it tells them of how to all sadhuji bhagwans follow that. The fifth vow of aparigraha, meaning not actually possessing anything. So even the clothes that they wear and all the things that they use to conduct their life is considered to be external to them and therefore not having a sense of possession of any material objects is the fifth vow of complete poverty, meaning you don't have any belongings. All those belongings that they are, you are not meant to be attaching yourself to them, meaning these are mine. They are there for you to use for that sole purpose. You don't accumulate anything that is not of value or not of use. You don't store anything except what is needed on a daily basis. And you don't develop a sense of possessiveness to any of those things. I don't know if you are aware of something, a very well-known sort of poem called Ratnakar Pachisi. There is a story of the Muni Bhagwant who actually wrote that Ratnakar Pachisi, which starts off like मैदान तो दीदू नहीं सीड़ पड़ पाड़ियों नहीं तपथी दमे काया नहीं शुभ भाव पण भाव्यो नहीं. And there are other verses, I'm sure a lot of people in the class know it by heart. I don't. But it was written by a Muni Bhagwant who had his mind on a particular valuable thing that he kept on with him and was constantly attached to it until a Shravak slowly, gently brought him to understand that while he was trying to explain non-possessiveness, he himself was so attached to certain thing, and this Shravak kept on telling him that I don't understand, I don't understand, I don't understand. And ultimately, when the Guru Bhagwant, after a lot of hard work trying to explain certain concepts to this Shravak, who obviously did understand, but was trying to alert the Sadhu Bhagwant that you're trying to explain this to me, but you yourself are so attached to this particular thing that you got with you. And then when the Muni Sadhu Bhagwant finally realizes that and then takes penance for that, asks for forgiveness, and then he creates this Ratnakar Pachisi, which we now know, and it's written very beautifully. I think it's called Pachisi because it's called 25 verses. So that is the fifth vow. The sixth vow, fifth vow of non-possessiveness, the sixth vow is that of not eating after sunset, Ratri Bhojan no Tyag, which is implied anyway, but some people will tell you that that is an extra vow that is also taken. These are the vows. The vow of not of being completely non-violent is obviously the one where use of any kinds of vehicles, use of footwear is considered to be something that you don't engage in. Foreign travel or distant travel using cars, taxis, buses, aeroplanes is generally not allowed. I mean, crossing from one place to another across a river using a boat that somebody else is providing was allowed, but air travel is not allowed. And therefore, our Muni Bhagwans do not use that. And there are examples where this kind of uh, liberties have been taken and people have traveled. And there are examples of how that is corrected. And there are examples of how the Sangh has actually then changed. So people who take the liberty of following a different set of principles are still following the majority of those principles, but have the freedom or have limited their vows to making it liberal to be able to travel in for the purpose of spreading the word of Bhagwan Mahavir. And their vows are still very strict. Their vows are still very widely uh, recognized, but they are not the same as the vows of a Nirgranth Panch Mahavratari Sadhu and Sadhviji. And we've got different uh, focus for the different groups where travel is allowed, but all of them would have the vows of ahimsa, asteya, of truthfulness, of brahmacharya, and possessing things. But because of the travel and what living in different places, uh, like houses and all those things entail, there are liberties that creep into the relaxation of those vows. And therefore, we see the difference in the different people who visit us abroad and their virtues and their sort of following on the uh, method that is prescribed and adhering to certain types of practice, which is still very much uh, ascetic in many ways, not at the same level as a Panch Mahavratari Guru Bhagwant. So those ascetic practices are also extremely important and very strict and very difficult. So in terms of our understanding and our reference for the virtues of these people, we need to be mindful of that fact that there are differences, but in terms of spiritual awareness and the messages that everybody is giving us, the core messages that all our Jain uh, leaders, Guru Bhagwans, are giving us are the same. So exactly who do we follow? If we are thinking that our future in terms of progress, so for example, if we listen to Rishibai, he would tell us that he found the life of Panch Mahavratari Muni as very inspiring, and if he wanted to follow the highest path, that is the path to take. It depends on who we feel or what we feel are the next steps for us. But it is also important to remember that the final ultimate common path. So if you are trying to climb a mountain and we are satisfied with, say, on Mount Everest, we say that I have capacity only to reach up to base camp. I don't have the capacity to go much higher than that. Then I will follow, I will make the effort to get to that place and then understand that the peak is still far away. That if I have the capacity, I desire to get up to that peak. And every person who is following a lesser path recognizes that there is a higher path. And ultimately, we need to understand that. And individually, every teacher can teach us a huge amount of and help guide us through spiritual development if they are so able. But ultimately, to answer Kavit's question, when you are looking for a guru, it is difficult, but ultimately you're looking for virtue. And you're looking for virtue that you want to try and achieve. And ultimately, people progress from gurus because one particular guru may not necessarily fulfill your next steps or may be able to guide you through the next steps. And then you change. That is hopefully what we can all do. Moving on from there, from the fifth life in Devlok, Bhagwan Parshvanath's Jeev. We'll start off with this story now, and I know we are running out of time, but we'll carry on with this. Gets born in the Western Mahavideh Kshetra in part of Mahavideh Kshetra, the Western Mahavideh, which is called Vijay, and the name of that Vijay is Sugandh. Within that Vijay, that is almost like a world in itself, because every Vijay can have a Tirthankar Bhagwan born into that Vijay. So a Vijay is like a huge world in itself, which is part of this Mahavideh Kshetra. So in the Western Mahavideh Kshetra, this Vijay called Sugandh had a large or has a large city called Subankara. At that time, the king of that city of Subankara or city state was somebody called Vajravirya. He had a queen called Lakshmivati, and the soul of Kiran Veg in life 4, Bhagwan Parshvanath's Jeev, who had gone to the 12th Devlok, Ajitbhai. So the soul of Kiran Veg from the 12th Devlok is born to Lakshmivati, and he is named Vajranab. There is a description of how Vajranab then grows up. He becomes an expert in the Shastras and the Sastras, Sastras meaning weapons. So he, as a prince, is a warrior as well, but he is also very learned. And his father, Vajravirya, one day decides to become a monk. And a lot of kings in those days never died as kings. They all, in especially we are talking about the history that we read in Jain texts. And in particular, say, if you look at the history of the forefathers of Ram and Lakshmana, I think the Jain Ramayana states that almost none of the kings in that particular Ikshvaku ones or in that particular clan, not one king died without becoming a monk. So all of them had this practice of uh, giving up their throne and the life of king, the luxuries of the royal life at a certain stage in their lives and moving into the forest as monks and then spending their last days uh, in deep meditation, acquiring a huge amount of spiritual progress, and many of them would have that as their last life before they went to moksha. Vajranab is now made a king because his father Vajravirya is becoming a monk. And it's mentioned here that him and his wife Lakshmivati, both of them take Diksha. So Vajravirya becomes a monk and Lakshmivati becomes a nun. Vajranab maintains the kingdom, ensuring that the people are happy and that the kingdom progresses. He had a son called Chakrayudh, and once Vajranab decides to become a monk himself after his son Chakrayudh has grown up, and he sits down with his son and says to him that I now wish to become a monk and I am going to hand over the reins of the kingdom and the burden of it to you. And it's interesting to see what his son says. He says, Chakrayudh, that if I've upset you, if I've hurt you in any way, any time in my life, from my childhood till now, then please forgive me, don't punish me. I would like you to stay on and carry on ruling this kingdom because it is yours, and I don't really want to be a king. So in terms of, if you look at the alternative, a lot of you may remember that King Shrenik's son Ajatshatu imprisoned his father, King Shrenik, to become the king. And here, the son who is being bestowed the reins of the kingdom is telling his father that please carry on, I don't want to be king. However, between them, there is a sweet argument, and ultimately, Vajranab, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji, succeeds in convincing his son that you should be the king. And instructs him to prepare the palki or the chariot to begin his journey of renunciation, so to take Diksha. And just then, when he's preparing this in the city or in the place outside the city, a Tirthankar Paramatma at that time in that particular area called Kshamankar ક્ષમંકર નામે જિનેશ્વર ભગવાને નગરીની બહાર આવેલા ઉદ્યાનમાં સંવસર્યા. So the Tirthankar Paramatma comes and the Devs create a samvasran, and the Tirthankar Paramatma sits there, this Ksamankar Aryant, and it is the right time for Vajranab to go to him, and he meets him and says that I'm so lucky that I have you as my guru, that ordinary people may have other gurus, but I am actually having a Tirthankar Paramatma who will be my guru. ઘણા કાળથી ઈચ્છેલા વ્રતનું દાન કરીને મારા પર અનુગ્રહ કરો. He asks him to make him a monk. બીજા ઉત્તમ સાધુઓ જેવા ગુરુ પણ પુણ્યથી જ પ્રાપ્ત થાય છે. કે one can only gain or one can only find a guru with a lot of punya. However, I am very fortunate that ordinary people may have a guru, and even that is only acquired by a lot of good deeds in past lives. But I am so fortunate that as soon as I've decided to become a monk and I have just put my son on the throne of this kingdom, you have arrived here and I am able to take Diksha under your guidance. માટે હવે દીક્ષાનું દાન કરવારૂપ તમારો પ્રસાદ મેળવવાને માટે હું તત્પર છું. આ પ્રમાણેના વજ્રનાભ રાજાના વચન સાંભળી દયાળુ પ્રભુએ તે પોતે તરત જ તેને દીક્ષા આપી. So Ksamankar Aryan Paramatma or Tirthankar Paramatma gives him diksha there and then. And within a short time, Vajranabh, the Muni, becomes well versed with all the shastras that Muni Bhagwan needs to learn. And when he is spiritually so elevated and ready, he asks for permission to vihar or do vihar on his own. એકલ વિહાર પ્રતિમાને ધારણ કરતા એ તીવ્ર તપસ્યા એનું શરીર કૃશ થઈ ગયું છે. So he then conducts very severe penance. એવા મહર્ષિ અનેક નગર વગેરેમાં વિહાર કરવા लाग्યા. And then he starts going from different towns and he acquires a lot of abilities and powers. And once he has acquired the power of flight, which is called Akash Kamini Vidya, Labdhi, and he once using that particular power of આકાશ માર્ગે ઉડીને તપના તેજથી જાણે બીજા સૂર્યોદય તેઓ દેખાતા એ મુનિ સુકચ્છ નામના વિજયમાં આવ્યા. So he comes to this place called Sukach, which is a different Vijay from where he was originally in the Mahavidya Kshetra. And what happens subsequently and how he meets the soul of Kamat in that life is something that we'll discuss next week. So let me stop sharing my slides if I'm not sharing. Okay. Any questions?
Pranam Ajitbhai, just one off question.
Uh-huh.
Mahavir Deshetra and Bharat Deshetra, where is our planet?
Well, when we use the word planet, it's confusing in this context because the concepts of planets as described by in modern science is different. So Earth is considered to be a planet. As we explained in the diagram that has been shared,
Yeah.
where we are is in Madhyalok. Madhyalok is the middle level. The middle level is the central part of that middle level from where the middle level starts and then spreads circumferentially, spreads uh, radially on both sides, is where we are. So that is the middle part. The graha, nakshatras, and all those that we call as celestial bodies are bodies that are either mobile or immobile. So all the sort of Tara Mandal, Jyotish Chakra, the moon, the sun, the other planets in terms of their movement around Meru Parvat. So the middle part is the central landmass is Jambudvip. In the middle of Jambudvip, there is Meru Parvat. There are other Meru Parvats as well. You can come to that at a later stage.
Yeah.
But all the planets move around that. Where we are, the Earth that we know, is Bharat Kshetra, which is at the southern part of Mahavidek, the southern part of Jambu Dvip. So, Bharat Kshetra, where we are, the world that we know is a small part of that now. Say, for example, at the time of Bharat Chakravarti, or at the time of Bhagwan Rishabdev, the whole of Bharat Kshetra was open, and we know that Bharat Chakravarti conquered all 6 continents of not the continents that we know of right now, but all the 6 parts of Bharat Kshetra from the north to the south. The mountain range of Vaitadya Parvat sort of divides that, and we cannot go beyond that anyway. So we are in what is called Dakshin Bharat, which is the southern part of Jambudvip. The diameter of that is 526 yojans. The whole of Jambudvip is 100,000 yojans. 526 yojans multiplied by 4,000 miles. So each yojan is in that context about 4,000 miles. You may hear slightly different versions. There are certain texts which might say about 3,600, 3,000, about 3,600 miles. So the width of Bharat Kshetra is 526 yojans. According to our geographical knowledge, the diameter of the Earth is 8,000 miles.
Yeah.
And that means the world we know is only 2 yojans. There is another 524 yojans of our world that we don't currently know. And we are, according to Jain geography, we are not mobile like a celestial body. We are still, the celestial bodies move around Meru Parvat. And as I mentioned last time, Jambudvip is surrounded by the salty ocean called Lavan Samudra. That is then surrounded by a ring-shaped landmass called Ghatki Khand. That is then surrounded by an ocean, and that is then surrounded by another landmass called Puskaravartvip. And that goes on infinitely almost towards the last ocean at the end of the universe called Swayambhurma. and there is no number given to the number of land masses and oceans. It's called asankhyat. So that is all the middle region. Above that, Devlok, below us, Devlok and Narak.
Okay, thank you.
Complicated, but this is
Complicated,
a whole, but as I mentioned last week, if you really want to, if you understand Hindi, and it's not too difficult, there is Dr. Sanjeev Ghoda, who has given excellent talks on this. I think there are about 4 videos or more, maybe.
I was trying to follow the Jambudweep in Palitana. Twice I've been there, just following the. They got a 3D display there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Hopefully, we can sit down and learn this all more together. But there is a lot to learn there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? And I know for many of you, this may sound as too far-fetched. The question is that it doesn't tie in with what we know now. So how do we explain the difference? There was Muni Bhagwant who has made a deep study of this and has published a lot of things and has had debates with other scholars and scientists in the past. I think his name was Abhay Sagar, Acharya Abhay Sagar Suri. I'm not sure whether he is still around, but there is a lot of there are lots of experts there, but it requires a level of faith, but also there are explanations that are scientific, but I'm not very well versed with them currently. Okay. Any other questions? I hope many of you are following the current Ambil festival. Do you all know that the 2 Ambil Olis are Saswat, meaning they are permanent? They would be there in every time, and they are celebrated always. Paryushan is not permanent. The Ambil Olis are. Okay, no further questions. I know many of you attended Bijal Ben's class on Thursday, where she explained about TAP. So it's good. Okay. All right. Shall we end? Kavit?
Yes, please. There's no other questions.
Okay. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our Paramatma and Guru Bhagwans, I ask for forgiveness. जिनाग्न विरुद्ध कहीं पण बोल्यो हो ते समय मनोजन काय करे तस्मिच्छामि दुक्कडम सर्वमंगलमांगल्यम सर्वकल्याण कारणम प्रदानम सर्वधर्माणाम जैनम जयति शासनम. See you all next week.
Pranam Ajitbhai, thank you.
Thank you, Bharat.
Wishing a good Shata to all.
ओम नमो सिद्धाय